All right, everyone. Hello. My name is Abhishek Luthra. I am the Chief Technical Officer here at HallShare, bringing to you another Founder Friday conversation here. This one's going to be a little bit different due to scheduling difficulties. We're going to have to pre-record this one, but we'll try to fill it with as much content and value as you get out of our regular series. Normally, just to kind of go over the format, these are live conversations that we do internally that now we have started to open up for the public for consumption. So although I'll be turning around and talking to the team here, I will also be turning around and presenting to you guys as well. And my presentation today is mostly going to be on slides. So that's why we're doing this on Zoom with the slide deck shared. And again, just like my previous talks, the slide deck is available. So just let us know if you'd like a copy of that. All right, so without any delay, I'll go ahead and start my topic. So if you guys have tuned into some of the previous conversations that, previous talks that I've led, you know that most of mine have been geared around technology, and this one is no exception to that. We're going to continue to build on the theme of technical concepts. Specifically today is going to be system design principles, and specifically to startups. So this is going to be kind of complex material, but I'll try and make this a little as simple as possible. Before I dive into the material, I'd like to give a shout out. This information is not solely derived by me. I did some research. There are some very cool people out there, specifically some entrepreneurs, some technology writers, agile coaches that have contributed to this brief. Specifically Sammy Cohen, Devin Dixon, Sebastian Radix. The links are there if you want to go and do your own research. I highly recommend it. These authors here have other articles that are really interesting. If you like the talk today, check out some of their work. What I've essentially done is applied things that I've learned through my experiences with HallShare, as well as some research that I found while in preparation, and kind of combined it together into one big slide deck. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so you have an idea now, whether it's you're part of a development team in a young startup or you're a technical founder, how do you go from having the idea to having the product, right? The important part of it is you can't just go in, dive right in, and start developing, right? You have to keep in mind, especially when you're part of a startup and you're not part of a large organization, things such as speed, agility, the cost effectiveness of what you're building out, future functionality, value, scalability, all these things you have to think about before you can even begin writing your first line of code. Because if you don't think about that, right, and you just kind of go right into programming, you're going to set yourself up for failure, because as the business grows, as the use cases changes, the application is going to get more and more complex. And if you don't give a little bit of thought to this and some foresight, it's just going to get a lot harder down the line, right? So with that, give me 1 second, right? So when you're part of a startup, whether you're whenever you have the idea, right, you've solidified your idea, whether you're the developer or the technical founder, you get a list of requirements, right? And throughout this presentation, I'm going to use HallShare as much as I can for as kind of like a case study. So Tommy is the other founder on our team, and I'm the technical founder. So essentially what he did when he had the idea, he came to me, he's like, hey, I need the application built, and this is what I wanted to do, X, Y, and Z. Now, our training as developers, as engineers, whatever your trade craft is, will tell you to follow and abide by certain guidelines, right? For example, the solid principles are something that is applicable to object-oriented programming and software engineers, right? Specifically, solid stands for, single responsibility principle, open-close principle, all of these that you can see, right? And what happens more than not is we go into autopilot, right? We go into, okay, like, yes, I was taught in school to, design my code like this or design my application in a certain way, right? But you realize in a startup, things don't really work that way, right? You don't have the time to sit there and architect out a perfect solution, right? You don't, you just kind of have to throw that completely out of the window and realize that things aren't going to be perfect. You're not going to be able to design the perfect solution. You're not going to be able to abide by all these things that you learned in school. So with those out of the window, how do you approach development, right? And in my experience,
sorry to cut you off for 1 second.
Yeah, please.
More than likely, you're probably gonna have to do the exact opposite of what you learned.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and this is, and it becomes even more difficult if after you graduated, you go into a full-time job. You're a software engineer or you're a developer. You know, you have those constructs around you of a project manager. You have a full team. You know, you have a regular paycheck. You're getting paid. You know, so all these things allow you to continue to focus on building out and getting better at the fundamentals that you were taught in schools, right? So when it comes to startups, none of those guide ropes are there. You can't really think the same way. And so it becomes very difficult to approach software engineering or like architecting a solution, right? And for me, and this is something that I thought was very kind of important and I wish I had known, you have to understand the concept of least when it comes to startup, right? This is something that I didn't know in the very beginning, right? And let me kind of give a business example of why least is such an important principle to have when you're part of a startup, you're dealing with a startup. From a business perspective, right? You want to gain customers, right? You want to make money, right? But you want to do that using the least amount of resources as possible, right? Whether you're going out seeking venture capital investments, right? You want to be able to accumulate the most amount of money in the least amount of time, whether Series A, Series B, whatever it might be. You want to be able to achieve the most amount of marketing, like spend the most amount of marketing dollars, the most efficient, in the least amount, you know, by spending the least amount of money, right?
The most impact, spending the least amount of money.
Exactly, right? And so ultimately, the principles of least comes down to value, right? You're trying to do the most valuable things in a startup, right? So essentially, the startups that can be the most valuable are going to be the ones that are going to be the most successful, right? And being able to do the least and get the most out is how you achieve value, right? Now, how do you kind of apply that to system design or system principles, right? So the two most important least principles that I've learned in my time with HallShare, first one is the principle of least effort. By definition, what the principle of least effort means, as you see on the slide, it just says minimum amount of effort needed to develop and deploy an MVP product, right? Now, why is this so important? Because it kind of seems counterintuitive. It seems like you want to put as much effort as you can into your MVP because you want that to be the most robust. You want it to be a working product, right? But the problem with that is if you take too long to build your MVP, one of two things have already happened, and Tommy is very familiar with this, is you've taken too long and you've missed your market opportunity, or two, you used up too many resources. You're out of dollars. Your runway to market is and you've gone bankrupt, right? In a startup, that's a very real fear, which a lot of people that coming out of college or if you work a traditional 9-to-5 job aren't exposed to, right? And so you have to kind of strip away all of those other concepts that you learned in school and just get down to what is the meat and potatoes to get the product to market, to get the application up and running, right? That's the most important, right? And so that's the principle of least effort. The second is the principle of least astonishment, right? Now, the principle of least astonishment is kind of confusing, especially if you're part of a tech startup, right? And essentially what that means is, and I'm going to read the definition, is a solution or an approach should not surprise a reasonably knowledgeable person when they encounter it for the first time, right? So this is the reason why this is complicated or counterintuitive for tech startups specifically is because tech startups want to be part of like the bleeding edge. They want to be the most current, most modern, most the brand new, right? The shiny new toy, shiny new company on the block, right? But where that leads you into trouble is, say you want to bring on a new developer, or you want to bring on a new systems architect. If you are so kind of ahead of the curve, then you're going to run into issues because there's going to be a huge learning curve for anybody that comes onto the team, right? So the goal behind it is to be innovative but not obscure, right? If you get too far and venture out too far, and when you're selecting your technologies that nobody knows it, you become a single point of failure for your team, right? And it really slows things down as you grow.
Right.
So you want to pick your stack, you want to pick your coding languages, your technologies as something that are modern, but also familiar with people.
At least initially.
At least initially, right? Yeah, unless you're going into a market where you want to be obscure, right? That is your business model, is because you're the newest, you're the most obscure, and you're trying to make an impact. Now, from a business perspective, also, why this is important is when you go and talk to investors, or you go and talk to stakeholders, customers, anyone who it might be, if you explain it to them and they have no idea what the hell you created your application using, they're going to be like, they're not going to really fully understand the capabilities that, your potential capabilities that your application has. But if you use something and they're kind of reasonably familiar, then, it goes into like, oh, yeah, wow, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, this technology can be used that way. That is more effective. Right. So that's another approach or another mindset to have when you're developing your application before you actually go and start writing lines of code. So principle of least effort, kind of getting the most value for the least amount of effort, and principle of least astonishment. Don't be obscure. All right, moving on to the next slide. All right, principle of economics. Now, this is something that most developers and engineers and technical folks specifically aren't exposed to in their training and in their education. And this is something that's really applicable to startups, but still very important to big companies as well. So if you're watching this and you're like, yeah, most of this conversation doesn't really apply to me, I don't work for a startup. Principle of economics is something that is important to big companies as well, right? And ultimately what it comes down to, give me 1 second, I'm trying to catch up on my note, is ultimately what it comes down to is making sound financial decisions, right? Now, most people think that when you're trying to, especially when it comes to tech, and you need to make a sound financial decision, the best way to do that is to do a cost-benefit analysis, right? You look at solution A, you look at solution B, see how much each costs, see what your budget is, which one you're getting the most bang for your buck, boom, you pick the decision, you move on, right? Unfortunately, it's not that simple, right? So real quick, do you think, once you do your cost benefit analysis, and I'm going to open this up for discussions, should you make the decision right then as soon as you know what technology you're going to use? And it doesn't have to be just technology. We can extract this a little bit more.
What software you're going to use.
What software you're going to use. Or with anything, right? Like if a CRM solution or anything like that. Once you've done your cost benefit analysis, should you at that point make the decision, and whether you're early stage startup or you're a late stage startup? Thoughts, Whitney?
I feel like no, but I'm not a numbers person, so.
Why would why do you say no?
I say no because cost benefit analysis is great and like those are facts and figures, but I still believe in like a gut instinct, and I still feel like even though a platform or a software, whatever it might be the best on cost benefit analysis, it doesn't really mean anything like if you bring in other other elements and like put it really into context.
Okay, so once you put it into context, right, you know you're going to go with this decision right now, or like your gut is telling you one and your gut lines up with your analysis. When do you make the decision? Do you wait? Do you wait until, I don't know, like
no, I think you just go ahead and do it.
Do it right then?
Pull the trigger, yeah.
Thoughts?
I think you just do it, yeah.
You do it, you do the cost analysis, you got the gut feeling, and you make the decision and execute, right?
I differ from her a little bit. I don't ever go with my gut unless it's on like people, right? When it's something as far as it's like a matter of like dollars and cents, I think it's just, all right, if this product is marginally better but is a lot more expensive than the other, I'll just make the decision on doing the lesser product. and now I just make that decision.
Yeah.
But obviously, it matters the level of decision that you're trying to make, right? The degree.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everything has
like,
context.
If it's just like, are we going to use Zendesk or are we going to use some other customer service platform? Nothing. But if it's like, all right, we're going to move $20,000 to this account or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, it takes more time and effort to make the right decision.
So that's a really good point, and this is why you have such a great business instinct. Yeah, so you shouldn't, at least, right?
Yeah.
Research and lean startup philosophies tell you shouldn't make the decision right away, right? There's a concept known as last responsible moment, right? And essentially, the analysis really comes down to is cost of delay. What is the cost of delay? Put away basically what the gist of the principle is to put away making major decisions till as far as you can. Making too many major decisions up front will cost you a lot in the long run, right? If you look at the diagram, right? So, and the reason why you want to do that, before I kind of break down the diagram, the reason you want to put away making decisions is to allow yourself to gather data. That is the most important piece. You want to make informed decisions, right? A lot of times doing a cost benefit analysis, you have that information right there, but you don't know what you don't know. And adding time element to that gives a new perspective on your analysis on which decisions you should make right there, then and there, right? And so, for example, right, and I'm going to use a very basic example, like whether to use Zendesk or build it in-house, right? If you're all the way here, we're very early on, right? You decide, hey, we're going to go ahead and go with Zendesk. It's going to cost us this much, right? You can find out maybe down the line as you get more data and as you learn, you may realize like, holy crap, I was way wrong. You know, it would have been much cheaper to build it in-house, or we didn't even need a Zendesk, or we didn't need a customer sales point of contact, right? So decisions like that, put it off, right? As it pertains to application design, right? So if you want to build in like a new plugin or a new class that achieves a specific functionality, right? And you're trying to pick, okay, do I want to do this in Python or do I want to do this in something else, right? Put it off until you have a little bit more data, right? How is this functionality going to be used? What business value is it giving us, right? Is it going to grow, or is this just going to be one little thing and it's just going to stay that way? Our company's not going to use it in any other way, right? And the optimal time to make the decision is one, when you have enough data and you haven't began to accrue cost of delay. Cost of delay is a very interesting concept that is more prevalent in major companies, but it is very, very important in smaller companies. But the reason why in startups it's a lot harder for you to analyze cost of delay is because startups generally don't have the luxury to have that analysis wing, right? To do a cost of delay, you really have to understand what revenue you're driving from each functionality that you're building.
Because there's greater opportunity cost at a startup than there is at a Fortune 500.
Exactly. Yeah. For startups, well, for big companies, they say, time is money. Right. But for startups, time is opportunity. Right? You lose the opportunity,
Time is death.
Yeah, time is death. Yeah. So really quickly, I am going to share a video. I don't know if the audio will get recorded with the Zoom, but definitely.
I think if you click computer audio, it should.
Computer audio?
Should we already be using computer audio?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and play it. If you guys can't hear the recording,
share the link.
Yeah, we'll definitely share the link. If not, go ahead and play this.
In most organizations, take a long time to get things done. Part of the reason for this is not that each of the actions required takes a long time. It's that things actually spend most of the time in various queues waiting to be worked on. Here's a fairly typical example. It's a feature that took a total of 46 weeks to deliver from when it was first captured. Of that time, it actually spent 38 weeks waiting in various backlogs and queues. You may not believe it, but if you do the same thing in your organization, you'll probably find something similar. It is not unusual for the amount of waiting time to be in excess of 80% of the total time taken. Seems crazy, doesn't it? The thing is, most organizations are blind to queues. We tend to focus more on the efficiency of the parts of the process, not the whole system that is required to deliver value. This hides how long it takes to deliver value end to end. Part of what drives this blindness is that we have a really poor understanding of how much the delay is costing us. Our gut feel about the urgency and value of things is often quite wrong. For instance, when we worked out the cost of delay for this feature, we discovered that it was actually worth over $200,000 per week. So, the 38 weeks that this opportunity spent waiting in various queues actually cost the organization almost $8 million in revenue. If they had known the cost of delay earlier, they would have done a number of things differently. If we are to make better decisions, we need to understand how the value of the things we are working on is leaking away over time. Knowing the cost of delay means we can put a price tag on all these queues and waiting. So, understanding the cost of delay helps us in three ways. Firstly, it helps us make better decisions by making the economic trade-offs visible. The value of speed over efficiency is easy to understand. Secondly, it helps us with prioritization. By using CD3, cost of delay divided by duration, we actually deliver more total value for a given capacity. And lastly, cost of delay helps us to change the focus from dates and cost estimates, which can encourage the wrong behavior, to speed and value. Put simply, cost of delay is a way of communicating value and urgency. Without information about the cost of delay, the system will optimize for other things. For more information about cost of delay, take a look at blackswanfarming.com. If you want to know how to quantify the cost of delay, come along to the Cost of Delay workshop at Agile 2014. It's on Monday afternoon.
Okay, so jumping back in. So yeah, so cost of delay, it is very important. Tommy, real quick, or Whitney, both of you guys, any thoughts on that video?
That immediately made me think of the cost of delay at your agency with the company that you guys brought on to remember,
Yeah,
which will be talked about in the car today.
right,
Yeah.
definitely. Whitney, any thoughts?
At my job with my boss, we always talk about like smarter, not harder. So I was kind of thinking about that.
Yeah. For us, when I watched that, right, what came to my mind was the feature that we developed where you can push custom orders out, right? Obviously, we haven't done a cost of delay analysis on that, but before we implemented that feature, you would have to manually track the orders outside of our system, right? It was very inefficient process. It didn't really, it added more friction for you, added more steps for you. Meantime, I was out there working on other stuff. We knew we needed a functionality for you to push custom orders, but we prioritized other things in front of that. But since we've implemented that feature, our orders in our system have now become a system of record. They've driven the value much higher. Had we known that, because most of the time, it took a week for us to develop that functionality,
Right.
but it was sitting in our queue, in our backlog for a month and a half, 2 months almost, right? So doing that cost of delay analysis, if we had known that we were going to get that much value out of something, we would have reprioritized that. Right. So going back to kind of application and system design, like as the video mentioned, right, doing this type of an analysis of understanding what your cost of delay is will help you prioritize some of your features over others. And that goes a huge way. And that's perfect. We're doing well on time. And that goes a huge way in kind of delivering value and getting to market faster. The last thing, kind of system design principle, is not really it's not really technical thing, but something that small teams and small startups, especially early stage startups, fail to do, is use agile methodologies. This is something that I know at Hallshare that we struggle with because we have such a small development team. It's really just me, right? So it's hard for me to kind of cross my T's, dot the I's, and participate in do my development in an agile function because I can just move around my priorities. It's very flexible. But if you are part of the team, you will have more than one developer, you have more than one team member, make sure you structure your sprints very short, have deliverables, set deadlines, and be accountable to your deadlines. A lot of times in startups, what will happen is you'll start working towards one feature, and I know this happens at Hallshare a lot, especially with me. You'll start working towards one feature, we'll have a discussion, and be like, yeah, it'd be so cool to have that. And then now you're chasing that technology or that development, that functionality. We don't really ever drive to deadlines or drive a feature to completion, right? And the last thing is to be deliberate. Don't just write code to write code. That's one thing that startups, again, will fall victim to, because if they have a technical team member, right? The technical team member is like, oh, I could write a quick script to automate this, or I can do that. Is it really worth the time? There's so many other things that happen in a startup organization that you really have to be deliberate in what you're writing, what functionality that you're focusing on, to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, you're getting the most value. You're getting the most for the least, right? To sum up this whole presentation in 3 different things, if you're part of a startup, your system design principles really come down to delivering quickly, limiting technical and financial debt. That was the cost of delay analysis, and then establishing a culture. Once you have established a culture, that'll help kind of feed and reinforce some of these development pipelines to continue to drive functionalities and features and value to your company. So with that, I'm going to kind of open it up to discussion. I don't know how we're doing on time. We got 5 minutes for discussions. I know this is not live, so I'll open it up to you guys. Thoughts? Questions?
No, I mean, I think that's spot on, because when you're starting a company, again, it's so exciting, right? At least initially. And I know, coming from me, I had all these great ideas, and then you started thinking about all these great ideas, and we were just like, okay, we could build this and do this and do that. But that's all like in like fantasy. You know what I mean? What's real is what you just presented. It's like, how do we really build it? Because everyone has like great ideas. Everyone has like, this is how we want to do it, or this is what the end product looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
But we have so much. I mean, 2 years have gone by. We have nowhere near end product.
Yeah.
So what were we doing in that 2 years? Valuable things, but what are they? How do you start? How do you finish it? How do you put deadlines to it?
Exactly.
How do you stay consistent with it? Like, those are like the critical things about a business that people don't know about.
No, and especially if you're an engineer or a developer, you're kind of handicapped, because they don't teach you that in school.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that in a job, because all those structures.
They teach you how to work a job, how to be a developer for a company.
Job. Yeah.
For a job.
Yeah. You get requirements, and you go off in the corner and you code.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
That is the exact opposite for anyone reading or anyone listening to this. That is not how it works.
No, not at all.
Like, Abby has literally had to learn so many new things in order to build our system.
Yeah. And so oftentimes in being a part of a startup, especially if you're the technical person, coding is the easiest part of the job, right? Because you're taught, you know how to code. What you're not taught, you don't know how to do, is all this other stuff: prioritization, driving value, culture, establishing a culture. All those things are very, very important, because those little things build up to either help succeed your company or help fail.
Another valuable thing is communication.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of devs, they can't communicate to a business person or to other people in a startup. So like, you have to be able to know what you're talking about and be compelled enough to say, this is the reason I want to do this. This is why we should do this.
Yeah.
And communicating that. Some people can't do that. I think you do a fantastic job of doing that.
I try.
So it helps me understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can all be supporting each other.
That.
Because like, if the left hand never knows what the right hand is doing, like, there's no way you're going to be successful. There's too many like roadblocks that are going to trip you up.
Yeah.
If you don't have that communication element.
And the skills that I kind of went through this, I know it was more geared towards startup, but if you're part of a large company, these are the same skills that move you up the ladder, right? And so it's vital that as technical people, as you're doing system design, you're aware of these concepts, you're aware of these things that are just bigger than just writing lines of code, things that go into, because why do you write code in the first place? It's to make money, right? To drive value to the business. And this is how you kind of start training yourself in that mindset.
So you're thinking baseline, getting a job is just being able to write code,
Yes.
Moving up, becoming a project manager, becoming,
Moving up,
having a big responsibility is if you can add some of the things that you just taught to your skill set, that helps you get promoted, helps you get
Exactly. If you can articulate or at least think in these principles and these mindsets, and you're part of a large organizations, and you can demonstrate that, that will shoot you up very, very quickly, because it will set you apart. Like I said, everyone can code. Not everyone can do this stuff and code. So that's the takeaway. With that, I think we're at our 30-minute mark, right on cue. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this recording. Again, we'll go ahead and post the slides and the link to the video. If you guys have any questions or like a copy of the slides, just shoot us an email, let us know, and we'll go ahead and send it your way. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys.